All right, welcome everyone to our next to last meeting of our IHR Food History Seminar. Today we have Srijita Biswas from the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Bhopal, and she's going to present her paper, Flavors Across the Borders, the 1947 Partition and Reconstruction of the Bengali Landscape. But before I give her a full and proper introduction, I'm going to just let you know we've got a couple of our other conveners here with us. We have Kelly Spring. Give us the wave, Kelly. She is a food studies entrepreneur, researcher, writer, and lecturer, and her work examines the impact of international crises on domestic and global food systems. Kelly is an entrepreneur. She just started her new business called The Fork Front, which is a consulting firm, and she has a book coming out in 2025 entitled Spam, A Global History by Reaction Press. Really looking forward to that. We also have Matt Philpott. He's an early modern historian. There he is, and learning technologist. And he more recently looked into how knowledge has been transmitted in printed materials on bees and beekeeping. He has published The Reformation of England's Past, John Fox and the Revision of History in the Late 16th Century with Routledge, and he currently showcases his work on beekeeping on his website, Early Modern Bees. So thank you both for being here with me. And last but certainly not least, our speaker today, Srijita Biswas. She is a PhD researcher at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, as I said, in Bhopal, and her research interests lie at the intersection of food, city, space, literature, and heritage. She has co-authored Binge Watching, Binge Eating, Popularity of K-Dramas and the Emergent Korean Cuisine in India in the Journal of Comparative Literature and Aesthetics. And currently, she serves as a board member of the Graduate Association of Food Studies. Thank you for your service, where she co-convenes a food studies lecture series called Edible Dialogue with Elif Birbiri, who is with us today also. So welcome so much, Srijita, and if you want to go ahead and get started.
Sure.
Yep. Let's just see how we're doing. Let me know if you have any issues.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I can't hear you, Srijita. I'm so sorry. You're muted. There you
Can you hear me now? Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the conveners of IHR Food History Series for giving me this opportunity to present my work. And so I am working on the gastronomic evolution of Calcutta, and my work lies at the interface of literature and history. Today's talk is a part of my PhD thesis, and I'll share my screen. I have a presentation to accompany this talk.
What are you?
Sorry, I'm just
You're
figuring.
fine.
Is this visible?
Well done. Yes.
Right. So this talk is about the 1947 partition of India, and particularly today I'll focus on the Indo-Bangladesh border. Since this is about partition, we'll start by understanding the state boundaries, then I'll focus on our personal case history of how partition surreptitiously entered our everyday life and came to the generations like us who didn't experience it, from the stories and anecdotes of those who experienced it. And the memory of framework is important to understand how it entered into the everyday life in this region, into the intimate spaces, since we are trying to map the developments around food and eating. And finally, towards the end, I will gather how the gastronomic modernities are shaped through the influences of partition and represented within the booming eating out cultures. And the slides are moving, right? So India gained independence from centuries of British rule on August 15th, 1947. And this occasion gave birth to two nations, India and Pakistan. The Dominion of Pakistan comprised of two sections, like you see on your screen, in this section and this section. The Dominion of Pakistan was carved out from the state of western side from Punjab, and on the eastern side from the state of Bengal. And this part was East Bengal, and later after partition it became East Pakistan. For this presentation, you need to follow this line because you see this part is non-contiguous to the Pakistan, that is, it doesn't share a direct border. And we will focus on only this part, which is the Indo-Bangladesh border and the food cultures and the culture flow across this border. So this line is also dubbed as the Radcliffe line after Cyril Radcliffe, who was entrusted with the complicated task of dividing the country based on religions. Without having a prior idea of the complex layers of the society, Radcliffe reached his decision within 5 weeks, and his task was made difficult by inconsistent and unreliable census, unyielding pressures from Muslim League and the Congress Party, and also by muddied vision of the region's security, peace, and prosperity for the days to come. The resulting boundary, which is the Radcliffe line here, meandered through the country and bifurcated the nation, reinvigorating domestic violence. So there was already violence building up to this moment. This particular action, the partition, reinvigorated the violence on the domestic front. So Radcliffe faced harsh criticism for his work, and as it was clearly hasty, that 2 decades later, we find that W.H. Auden writes that unbiased at least he was when he arrived on his mission. Having never set his eyes on this land, he was called to partition between two people fanatically at odds with their different diets and incompatible gods. The story of this separation is replete with insurmountable traumatic experiences and disenchantment, but there are also stories of resilience and spirited survival. Krishna Sen points out how some of these stories are apocryphal in her article Spaces of Anamnesis. One such story she mentioned was about an East Bengali family whose very home was partitioned by the Radcliffe line drawn upon, with little appreciation of the ground realities, so that the kitchen went to India and the living rooms to Pakistan. The wry joke was that the family would now need a passport to carry food from the kitchen to the dining table. So excerpts from Auden's this poem titled Partition and Sen's narration of the story shows how partition cannot be understood only based on the state narrative. The alternative narratives from people's experiences, such as those recorded in the 1947 Partition Archive, which is an oral history archive, are necessary to comprehend the gravity of the event. It helps in understanding South Asian consciousness and the repercussions of partition on the post-colonial reimaginaries, where its implications or effects are entangled in our everyday life. In my talk today, I aim to chart the effect of the event on the Bengali everyday foodscape, or the paces and actions around food. Today's presentation is a part of my ongoing doctoral project, like I mentioned, and it particularly focuses on the gastronomic evolutions surrounding partition in the city of Calcutta, which is again is a city I'm studying in my own dissertation. So Calcutta was also a city which was the second city of the empire, which was a erstwhile colonial capital. And the city also swelled under this huge influx of refugees. It was also a center for violence and suffered under the aftermath of this event of partition. My work is using a lot of literary and cultural texts as my primary sources, backed up by historical and archival documents. There are also other narratives of partition, which is definitely the Punjab and the Sindh side, but this is not under the scope of this talk. The 1947 partition of India marked an event, as Vinadas says, in the history of South Asia, and its geopolitical and social dynamics was changed forever. While a lot has been written about partition and its aftermath, widely represented in culture, films, literature, art, and oral history, the memory of the people who experienced it, the plightful experiences of the people, form the untapped archive of this event. The nuances of partition in our everyday are thoroughly felt through traces of memory, cultural practices, and myriad material practices. In terms of food, we experience this in our culinary practices. For example, the community tandoor of the Punjabis in Delhi, the place where I come from has a Bhopali group of migrants, and they practice their Sindhi food cultures in the areas they live, which is nearby from here. And understanding how food interjects into the everyday life of the regional diet, and here we are talking about the Bengali identity, explains our cultural attitude towards certain private and social practices. So we are trying to locate food within the discourse of this bifurcated land, and it demands an explicit understanding of the geography and the land within the culture. So the Radcliffe line that divided Bengal into two now has names of Epar and Opar. So this is a perspective, the concept of Epar and Opar comes like Epar as in this side. So if you're standing here in West Bengal, for you, Epar would be the West Bengal side and Opar would be the East Pakistan or the East Bengal side. So we'll use this term throughout this presentation. The partition, while creating Epar and Opar, or respective sides, created a rift among Bengalis who shared their languages. This section was a complete whole at first, was divided due to partition, and therefore this section also shared common languages, common cultures, literature, and nationalist sentiments against colonial rule, and irrespective of their religion. But the division, remember that it was based on the religious divides. It was also a loss of ideological assets, as Ornesha Sengupta argues, like files, archival records, and information. Set against a backdrop of such irreparable losses, the immediacy and afterlives of partition visibly changed everyday lives drastically. The geography of Bengal is laden with fertile soil, crisscrossed by streams and rivers, and is deltaic as it merges into the Bay of Bengal. So this is the Bay of Bengal, and this is actually a riverine landscape. So it has been fertile. Therefore, it has a diverse food culture. The land is bountiful in its fruitfulness, and streams full of fish and rice is a staple here. This is true in the case of both sides of Bengal. East Bengal's geography is more frequented by rivers and streams, and its cuisine abounds with leafy greens and foraged vegetables. The cuisines on both sides are distinct with nuanced differences bearing testimonies of ecology. My inquiry is also moved by my encounters with food and my family history of partition, as recounted in my grandfather's anecdotes. It therefore unravels how partition is experienced through post memory, as Marian Hirsch calls it, through materials, stories, and artifacts. Here I have studied food as a site for the exercise of memory and the creation of a spatial presence of home lost in the turmoils of the 1947 partition. The multisensory faculty of food and culinary practices is the only material way to partially reconstruct a sense of home lost on the other side of the border. To emphasize the importance of personal memories, I will put forward the case of my grandfather, who is on the left side. This is my grandfather, Manubendranath Biswas, and how his actions through small material acts and storytelling revealed his sentiments towards
I'm so sorry. Can you unmute yourself again? Apologies.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
I just. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Am I audible? Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So Manovendranath Biswas, my grandfather, and I'm about to share how his small acts, small material acts, and also storytellings or instances would would bring back memories of his desh, like you would call it colloquially, it's a Bangla for motherland or homeland. And so Manavendra belonged to this village called Shaharbati in Kushtia district in Bangladesh. And after he migrated on the side, this side of the border, which is in West Bengal, in Nadia district, at the age of 8 or 9, which is around 1944 to 45. So he would also mention in his recollections about places like Rangpur, Dinajpur, and other places, which are other districts of the East Bengal. And I think he lived in many districts because his father used to work in the railway. But when I tried to bring all this information in order while I was doing my research, I started in 2020, but then he was affected by dementia, so I couldn't do that. But what I understood that the railway job led him to also live in other districts. So when I asked him why did he leave that side of leave Bangladesh and migrate on this side, why did they do that, the family as a whole? He said that things were getting heated up, like communal tensions were heating up. And he also had 4 sisters who needed to be married off. So basically, there were also a lot of sexual violences and crimes in that pretext of this heated violence. Uh, s- Therefore, they migrated on this side of the border, which is in West Bengal and is also a Hindu majority place. Anusha Bashu Roy Choudhury mentions that this Bhadralok migrated in the fear of losing wealth and dignity. And I think it was also the case for this middle class family of the grandfather, who also migrated on this side, having a stable railway job, and they also managed to buy some land. My grandfather could speak Bangal, which is the Bengali dialect spoken predominantly on the East Bengali side, but he also could speak, he had taken up this West Bengali standard Bengali spoken on the West Bengali side. And then they used to live in a house which was also a house of property exchange. So it belonged to a Muslim family who exchanged the property with the grandfather's family while they migrated on that side of the border. So we also have a mosque around the corner of the house. And this place is called Horipur, which is again a very, Horipur as in it's named after the Hindu incarnation of Krishna, Hari. So it's a Hindu majority place right now. So despite his brothers left to the Gulf countries for their job, he did not leave the place. He managed all the land and the agricultural work. He was, endowed. And then also he used to be the postmaster of this place. So um, as a child, when we would visit the grandparents' home in this place, Horipur, he would often buy us small things like kea soap or pran lychee drink or mango drink. So this pran and kea, these are basically Bangladeshi products which were in circulation in the local market. And he would distinctively point out that how everything was written on the packaging of this, drinks or these chocolates in Bangla, and with the denomination taka, which is a Bangladeshi denomination for currency. So yeah, and and then his food preferences were also different. So he would often say that his mother used to cook better and than my grandmother, because my grandmother belonged to the West Bengali side, which is not where he belonged to originally. So therefore, these small experiences or expressions of differences, this is how I think the partition came to the later generations like us, from someone like Manavendra, who had the experiences of it on the first hand. So such differences, like nuanced differences, that the East Bengali cuisine was better for him, which was again very, sharp and spicy, uh, are based in regionality, and therefore such generalizations are more defined when it comes to discussions about cuisine. So Bengali cuisine is defined by the regionality and preferences. Differences like the East Bengali cuisine had foraged greens, shallow frying and absence of sugar, and the West Bengali ones involved deep frying and sugar. So there are very nuanced differences in also the culinary techniques. So however, there were common traditions like the making of bata or bhatta, a pesto or mashed vegetables or edibles with ample kick of spice and sharp flavors, and a very simple technique like you put it on, like this is a mortar and pestle. You just crush it and mix it with some mustard oil and you are good to go. So the idea was to finish a plate full of rice with a little bit of this mishmash. And these were also these edibles, as in they would the East Bengali side would also make this pesto or this mishmash with kind of fish, dried fish, which is very distinct practice on the Bangladeshi side. The cookbook Thakurbari Ranna by Purnima Thakur. So these are also famous cookbooks which has the references of how to cook a bata. Like cook it with rice, roast it on a flame, mix it with spice and sour flavors, and savor your dish. So they were also made with a lot of vegetable peels and the idea of zero waste. So they used to use the entire vegetable. When the East Bengali migrants migrated on the West Bengali side, they had to live on frugal means. So they would go to some neighbors and they would give away the vegetable peels or fish head they won't eat or use, and they would make this kind of bharta or bata, like they call it, with those little bit of things that they would get. And I think this also has a the idea of not to waste anything is not only moral but also historical, because during the colonial rule, Bengal faced 22 famines, and this was very much ingrained in the the attitude of people towards food. It defined attitude for the days to come. And the Bengal famine was a watershed moment and was like the partition, which affected the nation making phase. And in the nation making phase, the Bengal food distribution system never quite really recovered from the food insecurity that was unleashed during the Bengal famine, and it was now multiplied with the extremely resource intensive situation caused by the influx of the refugees. So in an interview with Prabhashini Dash for the 1947 Partition Oral History Archive, Prabhashini, who is now 91 when I interviewed her, and surprisingly, she has a very sharp memory. So she, referred to how people went hungry and people didn't have food to eat. There were fish in the rivers, but there were no one to catch them. So like there was a huge problem with food distribution system, and she was recalling all that in her whatever she talked about lifestyle in East Bengal. She also migrated at the age of 12, and on she also had scattered memories of 1947, the day India got 15th August, the day India got freedom, and she associated that day with Netaji. I'm not sure if she had seen him, but I think she had read about him somewhere. And then she also remembered the poverty-stricken days preceding independence when people didn't have money to buy food, and also in dire poverty, people couldn't eat, and due to lack of proper clothes, they wrapped gamcha or cotton towels around them and ate boiled leafy greens with salt to mitigate hunger. She remembers the times when children were fed gruel or khichuri sitting in lines. Several survey reports of the Famine Commission on the 43 famine, like the ones by P.C. Mahalanobis, K.P. Chattopadhyay, and Ramakrishna Mukherjee, as well as Karunamoy Mukherjee, revealed that fishermen were most severely affected by the famine. Similar food shortages were felt in the immediate aftermath of partition. Camps secured food in doles and watery gruel, barely providing any nutrition, and these camps became breeding grounds for diseases like cholera. The background introducing the hardship also explains the attitude towards food in Bengal, which is frugal and homely. Refugee colonies were developed, and with the refugee influx, the composition of the raw market evolved. Urbi Mukhopadhyay writes how these struggles for sustenance drove them to the mainstream of the metropolis beyond the colonies. Numbers of hawker markets sprang up in different parts of the cities in 1950s and 60s, of which the Goriahat and Maniktala hawkers' corners comprised singularly of refugees. Some markets catering to the Eastern Bengali taste also emerged near the refugee colonies, specializing in selling small freshwater fish, a known delicacy in Eastern Bengali cuisine. She mentions how the expansion of these markets with a variety of cheap commodities added vibrance to city life. Now there were greens like taro or kochu, as we call colloquially, shaluk or water lily stems, and many like this, like dried fish available in the colony bazaar that grew near refugee colonies. You have to remember that we are talking about these developments on the West Bengali side, and specifically in terms of Calcutta. So these colony bazaars developed, and they had new imports of raw material, which were most prevalent in the eastern side of Bengal. Now that the people had migrated, so there was a demand, and therefore the transformation in the raw markets. So food iconography was also seen in cultural activities like football, and there emerged two sub-regional identity, which is Ghoti and Bangal. It's mentioned. So I'll explain a little bit. So Bangal is a name which was given to the East Bengali migrant. It was almost derogatory in undertone, signifying a country bumpkin. And Ghoti was a form of a rebuttal given by the Bengal to the people who originally lived on the West Bengali side. And this uh, rifts happened because there were different kinds of unpleasant sentiments towards the migrant or by the original settlers. So therefore, they were given all these derogations like Bangal. Bangal as in somebody who is uncouth and doesn't know the ways of the urban life or something. And this rivalry also reflected in football fields. So this Kolkata derby has two teams. Like one is the Mohun Bagan, who has a broad support base from the West Bengali side, and the East Bengal. It clearly gives away that the support base belongs to the East Bengali side, and the migrants formed the fan base of this club. So, and they used this to food iconography, which is the prawn, in support of the West Bengali uh, settler, not settler, but the who were originally from the West Bengal side. And Hilsha was the icon for the East Bengal team. So it was a recurrent thing that when, let's say, East Bengal won, then the prices of Hilsha would spike up in the market, and would happen the other way around if Mohun Bagan won. So historian Boria Mojumdar, in his work on the formation of football and sub-regional identity, highlights how sports was a means for the Bangal or the East Bengali migrant to reinstate his status as a skilled and patriot, bearing allegiance to his erstwhile motherland, the East Bengal. It's important to know that how food symbolisms crept in and also supported the regional spirit. Similarly, like sports, food became the site of preserving the memory through everyday practices of following the recipe and recreating the sensory experiences of cooking, like smelling, touching, hearing, and the process, of course, of eating. The Indo-Bangladesh diplomatic ties and export of Hilsa often float as news headlines. So now I'll highlight the centrality of Hilsa in between these two sides. And so back in October this year, after announcing a brief ban on Hilsa export to India, Bangladesh government removed the ban and exported 3,000 tons of the fish during Durga Pujo, the grand festival in Kolkata. The Fishery Ministry cited domestic dearth of fish as a reason for the ban during Durga Pujo, a time when the demand peaks across the border. As a gesture of goodwill, the ban was lifted. So earlier, Sheikh Hasina, she also used to send in Hilsha to Jyoti Bosu, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, before Mamata Banerjee, the current Chief Minister. And in 2016, Hasina also sent the fish as a gesture of friendliness or goodwill to Mamata. However, such a ban also occurred in 2012 over a water sharing dispute between Bangladesh and West Bengal, and then was lifted again in 2018. Sheikh Hasina, by the way, also sent very famous mangoes from Rangpur, which is a district in Bangladesh famous for Harivanga mangoes, to Narendra Modi. Thus, we see how food items serve as diplomatic tools for conviviality or the sharing of food as gifts. So, Muhammad Afzur Rahman writes in the Daily Star that it has become the partition, the minorities from the lower strata did not migrate during the East Bengal. So he highlights the problem of fish, why the fish is reducing in the river, or the supply is reducing rather, because fish is there. The fishermen community, they are suffering due to this constant violence and tussle of this unstable times invigorated due to partition. So they were in the complete loss of jobs because they could not, there were no supply of fishing nets or other equipments needed to do their daily livelihood. So for the fishermen of East Bengal, after partition, now the Pakistan's eastern province, it was not easy to migrate to India as a livelihood was tethered to the region's rivers, lakes, and marshlands. Unlike people in liberal professions, their skills were not easily transferable. The decision to leave their homestead and fisheries behind was heartbreaking as it was fraught with utmost uncertainty and danger. Still, many left their birthplace due to communal violence, discrimination, and economic compulsions. The plight of fishermen and loss of artisans were collateral damage of such events, which wiped off villages and exposed people to the precarity of displacement. The episodes of suffering of fishermen and farmers, women abound in Bengali modern literature. So this is a cover of a book that I'll give a brief analysis. Due to my particular interest in literary studies, I explored some of these texts, and the themes and narratives coincide with the historical context of partition. One such fairly recent book is Indubala Bhater Hotel that charts the journey of a widow, Indubala, the eponymous Indubala, who is married off to Kolkata, and she was she originally belonged to Kolapota, a village in Bangladesh. And after coming to Kolkata, once she is widowed, uh, she starts a business of cooking food for the workers around her home. And then like this also covers a long timeline. So basically, it starts with the aftermath of partition, the life of the refugee trying to build something of their own. Then the idea of women coming into the workforce, and then later on, she also feeds the students around her, the boarders in the boarding mess, and these students who now that she is old, so it traces till she is old. The students who now come to her hotel, like it's called Indubala Bhater Hotel or Indubala's Rice Hotel, for their daily fare of eating their lunch or something, they also become fond of her, not only of her food, but also they write the menu and post it on Facebook, and this gathers a lot of attention. The timeline is really huge, but it also charts the kind of modernity that came into this gastronomic practices in Calcutta, the destination for a lot of provincial people going for work, and in a transit, let's say, going and in between coming and going. So Indubala's chapters are also very interestingly divided based on names of dishes, and the narrative runs like there's a dish she's cooking and that takes back to her family history, and then the ecology, and in the whole narrative, in the process of it, it sort of charts the social history of the place. Yeah. And there's also an interesting figure of Lakshmi, a forager woman who is also a Bihari, another migrant from another state, the state of Bihar, to Bengal. And she brings everyday foraged greens. She's a kind of the supplier for Indubala. And it also charts Lakshmi's life as a woman who is also trying to, sort of earn on her own and sustain in this city. So another kind of literature I explored in this charting of partition foodscape was vernacular literary practices, or sorry. Sorry, my slides are not moving.
Okay, it happens sometimes. It'll come back. Whoa.
Is it working now?
No, I don't see the slide. So try to share again, please. Ah, here we go. There you go.
I think I'm logged out by the it's an institute system.
Lovely Google, of course.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's I've lost my time of the whole day, and now they have logged me out.
We can go a couple more minutes if you just want to wrap it up for us.
I'll wind up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got 5 more minutes.
So another kind of literature explored was this collection of blogs or vlogs, and also this literary writings by people like food bloggers or people who had memories of eating at different places and different cuisines, but the memoirs. And this in literary studies, this is what Alison Carruth and Amit Igner calls vernacular literary practices. So that's the over I'm also looking at. So such platforms like the blogs or the vlogs, they cater to a wide readership or viewership. And in the fare of eating out at restaurants, they also portray the history and other details of food. Items like goala on the steamer curry, like the one on your screen, this is the one, and chital macher muitha, or these are like fish balls cooked in a spicy gravy. And Dhakaiya Morok Pulao, or the chicken pulao you get in Dhaka, and Kachi biryani, or a biryani where the meat is uncooked, it's just cooked under the steaming rice. Uh, these are all these dishes are described in detail with their history, their taste, the texture, and the place they belong to, how partition impacted the transactions in this kind of items. All these are written in these pieces of literature that I'm exploring. But the star of it, I think, on your right, which is kochu pata chingri bhape, or prawns steamed with taro leaves. And this is from the Facebook page of Kosturi. Kosturi restaurant is also one of the earliest restaurant that started serving East Bengali cuisine in Calcutta. So if you watch the vlogs, particularly one I remember is Picture Nama, the kind of voiceover they have and the representation they have are very nostalgic. So I think this also caters to the readership or the consumership of the East Bengali cuisine in the present context. So while these restaurants are catering Bengali food, which was unthinkable of being commercial once, they also sort of open out the market to commercialize Bengali food, which was otherwise thought homely, bland, and sort of cannot be made commercial like the Punjabi cuisine, which so outside what I understand, the Indian cuisine is largely understood as the Punjabi cuisine that is sold. So there's this generalization in taste and the beauty of Bengali homeliness in sort of describing this food, but there's also a gentrification when this food are served in the restaurants. And I think this whole fare of serving the homely food in the restaurant problematizes the idea of the homely food itself. Now that in this booming culture of eating out, like I mentioned in towards the beginning, that my aim is also to understand how the gastronomic modernity evolved in the eating out culture, and that opened up a market for the Bengali food, which was once thought homely. So the nostalgia is the kind of nostalgia evoked in these write-ups or the menu card of these restaurants. They also sort of cater to the memories of Desh, or the homeland that is never experienced, that is left and nobody knows, but you can only feel it through the retaining link of food. So that is something I found interesting. So while they invoke the memory of partition through food, it's good to recall how East Bengali food and West Bengali food had distinct differences. The rivalry right now in contemporary times between Ghoti and Bangal sort of died out, because now the cosmopolitan Bengali embraced both hilsa and prawn, and no matter which club of football they followed. These are also embalming effects to negotiate with bitter past in an attempt to forget, if not reconcile. Food brings history to the generation of post memory and ruptures the amnesia surrounding partition after 77 long years. We bear traces of partition on the foodscape and around us by placemaking, by naming a space in the name of a land left across, which we'll see in the next slide. So these two pictures are from my hometown, which is very famous for its sweet making industry. And so sociologist Ishita De, she has documented the sweet making industry in Krishnanagar. Um, Crafting Bengali sweets, I think that's the name of the work. So this shop is a century-old shop, which is Adhar Mishtana Pratishthan, who sells this GI tag. They used to say, I'm not sure if they still retain the tag, of shorpuri and shor bhaja, which are milk-based sweetmeats. And this is a famous shop. But I remember my grandfather, while he's way back from Calcutta to Krishnanagar, so before he goes to Horipur, where he lived through his life, he would make a stop at Krishnanagar, where we used to live, and would buy sweets from this place, New Pabna Mishtanno. So this was Pabna Mishtanno. So Pabna is also a place in East Bengal. It's a district. So once as a child, when I asked what Pabona, like the name in Bangla, this Pabna, this called as Pabna, but in Bangla, the same spelling is for Pabona, like won't get, it translate to. So I asked, Ki Pabona, what will I not get from reading the sweetmeat box, like similar box having the name of this shop, New Pabna. So he said that this is not, Pabona is not won't get, but rather it's a name of a district on the East Bengali side. So I think it was every time he stopped at this shop and not any other, because I think it sort of, I'm just assuming, but it's completely possible because a lot of business that happened after the partition had names of districts of East Bengali on in Calcutta. Also, like uh, Dhaka Mishtana Bhandar, I remember one on the Jessore Road in Calcutta. So this politics of nomenclature, something is also intriguing if you look at the different actors in the foodscape. So I think with this, I would just leave these are the references of my work. And I just tried through this talk to sort of, chart how these food cultures came on this side of this border or in both sides of the border. But in my work, particularly, I have looked at how this developed in the West Bengal side. There are so many, I think, opportunities to do it on the East Bengali side. And also, I think the majority of my descriptions are from the perspective of uh, Hindu religious practices and Hindu food cultures. There is also a lot of room for documenting the Islamic influences on the foodscape. Yeah,
Thank you
thank you.
so much. That was amazing. Thank you. And if you would stop sharing your screen, we're going to go ahead and go to our question and answer